Hello, welcome back. It's Sarah from Roadworthy with a weekly check-in. I missed last week due to a knitting retreat. Every year it's the same weekend every single year, and every single year it sort of sneaks up on me. And so I didn't film in advance, and I didn't read a super ton at the retreat. I do always read, but I don't have a ton of time. As you might suspect, there's a lot of knitting going on, a lot of gabbing and, whatnot. It started the Wednesday following the election, and it's 5 days, and the connectivity is really terrible out there. So honestly, it was kind of it was exactly perfect, like the escape from the news that, I needed. So it was, there's so much like energy and anxiety leading up to the election. It was nice to sort of decompress and shut down. I have some heavy breathing next to me. We have a foster, James, the greyhound, in the house, and he just came upstairs to see what was going on. And there's no way he's gonna make it on camera. He is very shy and skittish, so he's just gonna lurk in the background here. Anyway, but I did get a couple of things finished, and so I will share those here. The first is Seattle from the Margins. I didn't write down its subtitle. It's like erasure and exclusion, something by Megan Asuka. This book, it's a popular history, but it's based on the work that Asuka did for her history PhD. This really is about, it covers the period from the founding of Seattle to World War II. So I think it's 1953 is when the city was, founded. And really what she lays out is a history of the city from the perspective of those peoples who are sort of on the margins. So you're looking at Chinese immigrants, the indigenous Duwamish people who were displaced by the early white settlers, and then later Japanese and Filipino immigrants, as well as European immigrants, largely Scandinavians, that came to Seattle. So really looking at how these populations were largely migratory workers, and how, and she goes through initially how folks were working in the Alaskan fishing and canning industry, and then in the wintertime they'd come down to Seattle for a couple of months. Maybe they'd work in the timber industry for a couple of months, and then come back to the city. So again, through much of its early years, that largely the population of this area was migratory, and how the city had various laws, regulations, practices in order to make Seattle sort of for the white family, and again continuing to have have practices in place that forced these non-white, largely single men into these migratory labor roles. It's interesting talking about the hop boom. Hop farming was initially the big boom industry. And then, you know, again, looking at fishing, canning, timber, and then looking at different things in the city. And again, looking at how Yesler Way or Skid Row was initially the site of Yesler's mill at the bottom of the hill, and that street was used to bring logs down to the mill, and how that became a demarcation between the white, you know, family area of the city, and immigrants were forced to live south of Yesler, and really how that really shaped the city that we in some ways have today. So definitely interesting for those who are interested in the history of Seattle and this area. Although I live in Seattle now, I am not from this area, and so I kind of know very little really about the history. So interesting. Yeah. So that was that. A little bit of a niche book. I get it. Then I just finished listening to this morning Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon. He is an Irish author. And I listened to the audiobook, which I highly recommend. So Ferdia Lennon, again, is an Irish author, and this is a story about the Peloponnesian War. You might think this is historical fiction, but not really. So the Peloponnesian War, as I recall from my high school, history, was a series of wars throughout Greece, and this is where Syracuse defeated Athens, and many of the Athenian soldiers were captured, like hundreds of them, captured and imprisoned in a quarry outside of town. I have no idea if this is factual. But the story is based on two sort of down on their luck, out of work potters who bond together over wine and poetry. And it's told from Lampo's point of view. He's a little bit of a buffoon, a little bit of a ne'er-do-well. He's in his late 30s and lives with his mom. Like I said, he's out of work, always sort of scheming to get a drink. And he's friends with Gelon, whose wife left him. His son died. So he's kind of this melancholy guy. And the two of them on a lark go to the quarry, and they offer any of the Athenians wine and some food if they can recite Euripides. And then this starts to snowball into the two of them decide they're going to do a full-on production of Medea in the quarry with the Athenians as the actors. And it is told in very much contemporary Irish dialect. And the audiobook is definitely in Irish dialect, and the Athenians have an English accent. So I'm sure there's a commentary on, Anglo-Irish relations there, but let's set that aside. And this book is oddly hopeful. The Athenians are starving. They're slowly dying of starvation and disease. And Lampo and Gelon are smuggling in food and wine and cheese and olives, to keep their actors alive, to stage this production. And, a lot of the plot points seem really grim. And the ending is pretty grim. But this book, it is oddly hopeful. Like I said, it's funny. And it is told in this modern dialect. So you often forget that this is taking place in ancient Greece. And a lot of it is, thematically, like having loyalty to your city, your nation, your tribe, but yet having loyalty to, the tribe of mankind, admiring art. Euripides was Athenian, so again, admiring art no matter who's creating it. The power of art to build connection and bring people together. The ability of art to save people, in this case both literally and figuratively. And so, you see how Lampo and Gelon are changed by this experience, but also how some of the Athenians are changed as well. So like I said, it's oddly hopeful. It's a short book, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, and I think if people do decide to pick it up and try it, definitely go for the audiobook, because it is really well done and the humor really comes out, again, with that Irish brogue. So it's fun that way. So those are kind of the two books that I finished. I did sort of pick things up and DNF them. And it could be because I was at the retreat, so I don't really want to talk about those. But I'm in the middle of a couple of things. I picked this up at the retreat, Yellow Bird by Sierra Crane Murdoch. And this I wanted to pick up for Nonfiction November. This is about Lisa Yellowbird and her. It's a little bit of biography about her and her family, but also her quest to figure out what happened to a young white man, Casey, who disappeared during the North Dakota oil boom. Here on the Fort Berthold Reservation. So fascinating and infuriating and compelling. I'm also reading Eden Robinson's Son of a Trickster with Melinda at Web of Stories. This is the final book in our Pacific Northwest Indigenous Reading Project. So we're both really enjoying this one. And I got to pick up another audiobook. So that's what I got going on this week. I am home this week, and this weekend I'm actually going to be at a silent reading event. My mother-in-law and I are going up to her condo up in the mountains to read for the weekend. And when we call it silent, because otherwise we'll end up chatting all weekend, but we read, and and then it's like, okay, time to take a break to eat, you know, and then you get back to reading. So anyway, that's a fun time, and this is our first time doing it up in the mountains, so I'm looking forward to that. So who knows, I may have a whole pile to talk about next week. All right, hope you all are reading some good things, and catch up with you next week. Bye.